Hi. If you're new here, hi, my name is Ella. I'm 6'5", I am a full-time model, and I was actually one of the founding members of Reese Witherspoon's book club. If you are returning to the channel, then I guess you and I have a secret to share, and you can feel free to corroborate my story in the comment section below. So, it's been about a month since I have uploaded anything as of time of recording, and for whatever reason, my Arcane video picked up a little bit of traction. So there are actually a lot of new friends on the channel. I don't want to get sentimental or sappy or anything, but I just wanted to say, like, right out of the gate, I'm very happy that people seem to like the content that I'm making, and that makes me very happy. I put a lot of work into these. I think that they're funny, and it always makes me happy that other people think that they're funny too. Moving on to more pressing matters though, I know that you're jealous. I can tell that you are all jealous of the knockoff BG3 Asterian Girl dinner merchandise. It's okay, we can't all be this tripped out. The roommate that I originally started making this series for, she gave this to me as my birthday present. Catherine, thank you for the birthday present. It is very much appreciated. If you came to this channel accidentally or because of my Arcane video, you may not know that my main thing so far has been these magicians videos. If you are new to this series, I have been working on a slightly unhinged recap of SyFy's iconic television program, The Magicians. It started out as a passion project for my roommate for her birthday because when we first moved in together, she let me force her to watch this show together, and we have grown to love it together. This installment of the series is going to be recapping season 3, which is the 3rd season in case you couldn't tell, which is pretty far into the show. I suppose there's a world in which you could watch this one by its lonesome, all by itself, but if you have the time, I would highly recommend going back and watching my first 2 videos of season 1 and season 2. There's quite a lot that happens in this show. If you don't have the time to spare, and I truly understand if you don't, then don't worry. I will give you guys the highlight reel of seasons 1 and 2 super quickly so we can all jump into season 3 together. And it is really important that we do jump into season 3 because I do, in my heart of hearts, believe that it is the best season of this show. Season 3 is so excellent, and if you only watch one season, it should be this one. This season of The Magicians is so f***ing good. Okay, let's run down the characters really quickly and see where they have all landed post season 2. If we remember, the season 1 villain was the Beast, and season 2 was sort of about what happened next, with the secondary big bad being the trickster god Reynard. First we have Quentin. Quentin Coldwater is sort of our protagonist, but the entire series is sort of a critique on the concept of a protagonist. However, season 3 much less so. In fact, it is actually once again going into the hero's journey. Quentin is a fanboy, that is the easiest way I can describe him, and up until this season he has been so unbelievably insufferable, but it's okay. After season 3, we get so much amazing Quentin content, and Jason Ralph, you deserve an Emmy, a Golden Globe, a Tony, a BAFTA, an Oscar. I would throw in a Nobel Peace Prize and a Purple Heart personally, but that's just me. Next up we have Alice Quinn, who is genuinely insufferable and will remain so throughout the rest of the show. Alice is sort of like Hermione Granger, but blonde, and that's like kind of just her whole thing. And she and Quentin are in an on again, off again, on again, off again relationship, and I genuinely do not care about their dynamic at all. Next we have Julia Wicker. Julia is a very unique character. She starts the show on the outs with almost all of them. She's Quentin's childhood best friend, but he got into the prestigious Breakbills grad school for magic and she didn't, and that caused a huge falling out that sort of pushed her into, I wouldn't say a life of crime, but certainly a non-traditional education in magic. Julia was assaulted by the trickster god Reynard and spent all of season 2 on a revenge quest to kill him, but once she had him in her grasp, she chose mercy and left him to the hands of the gods instead. Similarly, we have Katie, my legend, my superstar, my queen, my savior. She is the brawler character. She's the muscle of the group. She's sort of like the tough and mean one. And then next to Katie, we have Penny. They're in a beautiful relationship. I will hear no criticism of it whatsoever. You will hear me talk about how much I love the two of them together to a haunting degree, and I am sorry for that. Penny is a traveler, which means that he can teleport and astral project. They are really bad at clarifying what the rules of the teleportation are, but basically, he can teleport himself innately. He can just do that. That's like in his DNA. He needs magic to teleport other people. Finally, we have what I will be referring to for the most part as Team Fillory. So first and foremost, Fillory is basically just Narnia, except it's real in this universe. It is a magical land with magical creatures. On Team Fillory, we have objective fan favorites, Margot and Elliot. Elliot is the High King of Fillory. They have a rule that says that children of Earth have to be the kings and queens of Fillory. Elliot was like blood ordained to be king. He's not necessarily good at it, but he is trying to get better. Margot, on the other hand, is just a firecracker of a character. Summer Bishel devours this role, and she is so cool. We also have Fen. Fen is from Fillory. She is Elliot's wife. They did not get married for love. He is certainly gay. It was an arranged marriage and they are trying to make it work. Last on our list of characters that you should know about is Josh Hoberman. He does not matter. Following season 2, the big issue items on the table are magic is gone. That's most of their problems, honestly. Basically, in Fillory, they killed both of the twin gods of the world, and as retribution, the rest of the gods turned off magic for their entire universe. And boy, is that bad. First, in Fillory, magical creatures kept their magic because it's inherent, it's in their DNA, and those magical creatures are moving in, namely the fairies. Margot and Elliot have entered into some strange deals with the fairies, and now the fairies are coming. And then over on Earth, again, we do not have magic, except for Julia. At the very end of season 2, Julia showed that she had just a tiny little spark of magic, but she didn't know where it came from. All right, now that we are all caught up, we're gonna go ahead and jump into The Magicians season 3. So, Penny is working for the library. The library is this sort of amorphous, bureaucratic agency that exists separate from Earth. The library houses books, obviously, specifically the books of everybody. Every single person in the world has a book in the library that tells their entire life story. The reason that Penny joined up with the library is that he was trying to get information to help Katie and Julia with the whole Reynard thing. And also, he was poisoned last season, pretty late into the season. And because the library exists outside of time and space, whenever he is at the library, the poison stops spreading through his body, but every time he returns to Earth, it continues to devour him. So basically, it's bad. It's like, what if it was rough? So again, because there is no magic, all that Penny can do is travel. So they basically send him out to retrieve overdue books, and then they yank him back to the library. While he's on Earth, he meets up with Katie, and they're really cute together. I don't know what else you want me to say. Katie's currently working on finding a cure for what is described in canon as Cancer Plus. Over in Fillory, bad news. Because a lot of their economic system ran on magic, they're actually broke now. And people are angry. Margot and Elliot are the only two that are still there as rulers, and oh my god, they're not happy with them at all. Also, the way that these fairy deals work is that in order to actually see the fairies, you have to have made a deal with them before. So Margot and Elliot can both see the fairies everywhere that they look, but nobody else can see them. So on top of the whole Fillory is broke thing, everybody is really confused as to why Margot and Elliot are like acting super duper strange. So people are losing a bit of faith in them. Fen is similarly not doing well. In season 2, Margot made a deal to trade away Fen's baby, which, you know, is not nice of her. So Fen is like kind of on one. She's cradling logs. She has wooden toes. There's like a lot happening. Team Fillory is not doing so great right now, if I'm being honest. On top of the people not necessarily trusting them, the Fairy Queen herself, played by icon, legend, superstar Candace Cain. Candace Cain, you will always be famous to me. The Fairy Queen likes to deal exclusively with Margot. They have a very fraught relationship. In season 2, Margot had to trade away one of her eyes to the Queen in exchange for safe passage through the fairies' kingdom. And the Fairy Queen has been sending Margot on these weird little quests, and it's a lot of random stuff. It's like, go find me 100 earthworms, bring me a jar of dirt. It's like things like that, but every time Margot tries to pass it off to somebody else, the Queen gets really, really mad at her. Like, she'll find a way to find out, and she'll be like, don't do that. Back on Earth. Because Breakbills doesn't have, how you say, magic, they're kind of, je ne sais, flopping as a magic school. So the dean has a meeting with this lady, Irene McAllister. Before you get attached, no, we really will not find out what her deal is. She's just sort of wealthy, vaguely evil woman. So Irene is on the board of trustees for Breakbills. They're not necessarily happy. They want to take money from the school and allocate it to searching for Mayakovsky. Mayakovsky was a teacher at Breakbill South. He was sent there in exile because he had a relationship with a student that ended very, very terribly. Last season, we found out that he was also a doomsday prepper. He was preparing for basically this. He was making magical batteries that could store magical power and then be able to distribute it. Obviously, everybody wants these batteries. Everybody wants to find Mayakovsky, which is big because he escaped. Because the wards are down at Breakbills. We also get a Quentin and Alice flashback where we find out that they broke up. Thank God. Between the end of season 2 and the beginning of season 3, they broke up. I don't know if I have any hashtag Qualis stans in my audience, but if I do, I just want to know why. For what reason? And also, who hurt you? Alice left Breakbills because she spent most of season 2 as this thing called a Niffin, which is a being of pure magic, so she was able to study really, really high-level magic, and she's feeling very, very confined at Breakbills by not even being able to study normal magic. Like, she's so over it. Katie meets up with deaf icon Harriet. Harriet is this thing called a hedge witch. Hedge witches are people that exist outside of institutions like Breakbills and learned how to do magic on their own, basically. So Harriet is a hedge witch. Katie was a hedge witch. Julia in this timeline was a hedge witch. We'll get into the timeline stuff later. So Katie's teaming up with Harriet, but very much on the down low. This is kind of like a hush-hush secret, and Penny in particular does not like it because Penny works for the library and Harriet hates the library. Her whole thing is that she believes that knowledge should not be safeguarded by a bureaucracy that is not necessarily in touch with the average everyday person. It's made more complicated by the fact that the reason that Katie is working with Harriet outside of like generally agreeing with these opinions is because she's trying to find a cure for Penny. She's trying to find a way to save him from, quote, Cancer Plus. So they find a spell that could maybe work. The issue is that they need magic to do it. They need a battery. So everybody wants this battery. Julia and Quentin team up with Josh Huberman, their party friend. They're trying to find a god who would know something about how to turn magic back on. And because Josh is their party friend who loves to party, they find Bacchus or Dionysus, depending on if you are a Roman or a Greek mythology girly. There's a lot of like that happens with the whole Bacchus scene because they spent money on a party set and extras for it. But basically, Bacchus tells them that there is, quote, a secret back door to magic. So there is a way. There is a way to turn it back on. Rest easy, everybody. Magic is coming back. At some point. Margot and Elliot realize that the Fairy Queen is kind of always one step ahead of them because she has Margot's eye and she can use some sort of fairy magic to basically see through Margot's eye into Margot's other eye. So she's like one step ahead of them at literally all times. So they realize that the only way that they can communicate with each other without the Fairy Queen knowing is through pop culture references, because even though the Fairy Queen can hear them, she won't be able to understand them. I don't know if you guys are picking up on this, but this show's like a little bit silly. Elliot's plan to deal with the fairies is to go hunt the White Lady. Do we remember her from season 2? She's this deer lady that when you catch her, she has to grant you a wish. Instead of the White Lady, he finds this other questing creature, the Great Peacock of the Woods. In the show, they refer to him as such, but with the P being silent, if you're catching my drift. He is like very ostentatious and like very like showboaty, and he makes a big deal of telling Elliot that he's going to send all 7 of them on this magical quest to turn magic back on. And the way that they will do this is that they have to find 7 keys. So we have 7 MacGuffins in play. I hope we're excited. In order to start finding the keys, they have to find the book with no author, which is in some like random library in New Jersey. Q and Julia go to the library. They get the book. It is called The Quest for the 7 Keys, and it's mostly blank. The way that it works in the show is that you get 1 chapter at a time, and like you get the chapter for the first key, and then you have to go get the first key, and then when you get the first key, you get the chapter for the second key, and like that's how it goes. That's like what the deal is. The Quest for the 7 Keys, like the book itself, is not about the 7 of them. It's about a knight who is captured by a witch and imprisoned in a castle, and the knight's daughter has to go on the quest to get all 7 keys so that she can get her dad. That's like what the book is. Not super relevant, but keep it in the back of your head for later in the season. So they get this book, and it shows them the first chapter for the first key, and it is in Fillory, on this place called After Island. Also, at the end of the episode, we catch up with Alice, who, remember, no longer at Breakbills, no longer talking to anybody at all, just kind of minding her own business. So apparently, when Alice was a Niffin, she did something to off a monster called the lamprey, because magic is down, but the lamprey is a magical creature, so it still has magic, and it knows that Alice is weak right now. It's like coming after her, and can I just say that the tonal dissonance between Alice scenes and then like the fun questing adventure is literally crazy. You know that meme that's like, "This is where my parents died, Raphael. Cowabummer." Like, that is literally Alice and then every other person in this show. Like, she is doing Hamlet and everybody else is like not even doing Shakespeare. Season 3, episode 2. So at Breakbills, Q, Julia, and Josh get their hands on that Fillory clock that, like, hypothetically, when you walk into it, you would be able to be teleported to Fillory. It functions as a portal. The problem is they don't have magic, so it's not working. So they're also going after Mayakovsky's battery. Remember how everybody needs this battery? So Mayakovsky is a bear. I don't know what you want me to tell you. So Q and Julia hear about this, and they specifically hear that Bear Mayakovsky was spotted at a hedge witch bar, which, you know what that means. It's time to see Katie, because this is Katie's only thing, is that she's a hedge witch. This is also really big news, because Katie is kind of actively at Julia right now. For like all of season 2, they were like this, inseparable twin flames, and then because Julia chose to spare Reynard's life, but Katie was really like not with that, they ended on like really, really, really bad terms. However, they reveal the like Julia has magic lore, and they're like, if you help us get this battery to power up this portal, then Julia will use her magic to try and help save Penny. So there's something in it for her. Ugh, okay, so they go to the bar and they realize that Mayakovsky was with that student that he had an affair with. Her name is Emily. I really don't care for this character. Sorry. The Mayakovsky Emily plotline is really stupid to me, and it is probably because it has a lot to do with the Alice plotline, and I don't like the Alice plotline. So, like, Mayakovsky is with Emily. That's all you need to know. We get more information circa the lamprey that's hunting Alice. It is and also, it's a body snatcher, so everybody is suspect. There is a chance that anybody around Alice could be the lamprey. Let's keep that in mind. Let's keep her on her toes. Like, oh my god, I just don't care about this plot. Margot and Elliot are still broke, by the way. They have no money. Direct quote from Elliot in this episode: "We're about to be a third world country on a planet with 2.5 countries." Funny. Elliot is going to find that first key on After Island, and he's disguising it like a tax mission. They are going to get to After Island by going on this boat called the Muntjac. The Muntjac will become very, very important. What's important about this boat is that it's actually sentient. It has, like, thoughts and feelings and autonomy. Also on this boating adventure is Fen, which is suspicious as because the fairy queen is the one that was like, you should bring Fen. You should bring Fen. Turns out the reason that the fairy queen wanted Fen to go is because she's also sending a third person, Frey. Frey is technically an ambassador from the fairy court. She's also Fen and Elliot's daughter. She's like 16 in the show, and this is explained because, like, time works differently in the fairy dimension. This is the daughter that Margot traded away on behalf of Fen. She also comes in hot. She does not like Elliot. She does not care for Fen. She doesn't care that, like, these are her parents. She was raised as a fairy, and she is loyal to the fairies, and she will tell you that. That being said, Fen does not care. Fen is so excited to have her kid back. It's really, really heartwarming, and it sucks so hard that Elliot is not buying it for a second. Elliot absolutely does not believe that this is his kid. So the three of them get to After Island. Elliot declares it a province of Fillory. I love him so much, but I will not support colonialism. Honestly, the After Island plot doesn't really matter that much. All you really need to know is that we get introduced to, like, the rules of the keys because they get the first key. Each key has a specific power that's associated with it. So this first key, whenever somebody holds it, it conjures up what they fear the most. That's it. That's all you really need to know about the After Island plot. And then also, like, Fen, Elliot, and Frey bond a little bit. Hooray. Back on Earth, they get the battery. Emily was the one that turned him into a bear, by the way. Doesn't matter. It's not gonna come back ever again. They get the battery. Katie does run off with it, which is good, kind of, because Penny blips back to Earth because he, quote, could feel himself dying. So we're on the clock now. Yeah, it's a little bit rough, maybe, yeah. The last scene of the episode, Quentin gets the second chapter in the quest for the 7 keys, but the lamprey the lamprey possessed him. Season 3, episode 3, it's an Alice's parents episode. They must have like a contractual obligation to have one Alice's parents episode every season, and without fail, they are always the most boring episode of the season. We get it. She has mommy issues. She's not special for it. Honestly, I don't care about the lamprey plotline literally at all, so I'm just gonna blast through it. Basically, it keeps body hopping between her, Quentin, her mom, her dad, etc. The only way to kill the lamprey is through electrocution. It gets into her dad, and then because he has a weak heart, the lamprey is like, but you can't kill me because you'll kill your dad, and Alice just kills him anyway. So Alice Quinn murdered her father. And did you move? Did you clap? Didn't think so. I will say, though, the actor that plays her dad is actually kind of doing laps. He was chewing scenery in a beautiful way. Back to the real plot line that people actually care about. Elliot, Fen, and Frey are chilling on the boat, and then, pirates. But before they have to fight their way out, a mysterious keyhole just appears in the wall, and Elliot uses the key that they got from After Island to open it, and it teleports them to the Netherlands. So they vanish, leaving the Muntjac. Because Quentin is on lamprey mode this episode, it's up to Julia to track down that battery that Katie stole. She finds Katie doing that spell that Harriet gave her to try and save Penny. Guess what the spell is? Did you guess summoning a demon? Because it is summoning a demon. So Katie is like, don't judge me for this. And then Julia's like, okay, do you want help? So they successfully summon this demon. He is like, okay, well, to do this ritual, I do have to dig around in Penny's intestines. So Penny astral projects, like, on instinct out of his body because the pain was too much for him. So Penny is astral projecting. But remember, when you astral project, nobody else can see you. So he's just chilling watching this. Over in Fillory, Margot, who was left behind to run the country, gets word that the Muntjac has been hijacked. She goes to make sure that Elliot's okay because she doesn't know that he abandoned ship. The Fairy Queen is also weirdly interested in going, so FQ goes with them. So they get to the Muntjac. Two things happen. One, Tick is a pickpocket. Tick Pickwick pickpocket. Say that 3 times fast, you can't. Tick Pickwick is a pickpocket. So he pickpockets Margot's eye from the Fairy Queen. The second important thing that happens is we get introduced to hot lesbian pirate queen. And she and Margot immediately have, like, very palpable chemistry. And Margot being a lesbian is a thing that matters so much to me. I will die on this hill. I'm not kidding. The issue at hand is that the pirate's ship is also sentient, just like the Muntjac is. However, this is like the real plot point, by the way. I can't make this up. I couldn't come up with this if I tried. The pirate's sentient ship thinks that the Muntjac, the royal sentient ship, is sexy. And it wants to, you know. However, the Muntjac is, like, not down to clown. It conveys that it does not want to do that. But because Margot is High Queen, and it's the royal vessel, she could command it to, and it would have to obey her. Margot goes to have a heart-to-heart with the Muntjac, and she basically says that, like, if you don't want to, I'm not going to make you. Like, that's the ethos of it. And the Fairy Queen is lurking. The Fairy Queen hears Margot say this, and she is going to remember that. So before anything else can happen, the Fairy Queen slaughters all of the pirates, doing 2 things. 1, proving that no means no. And 2, proving that she can kill so many people so fast. She also says to Margot, quote, "You stood up. you were a queen. That's who I need you to be. Let's all take note of that, okay? There's going to be this recurring theme of the fairy queen sort of like molding and shaping Margot into being like a good ruler. However, before we can get too comfortable, the fairy queen is like, I do know that you took your eye back. Give it to me. Give me it back. It's mine. And in like genuinely one of the most insane power moves of the millennia, Margot takes her own eye and the fairy queen is like, you know that can't be fixed, right? Like, you have destroyed your own eye. And Margot is like, yeah, I know, but now you can't spy on me, so I'm fine with it. Margot Hanson only making money moves for all time. Oh, I love her. Remember how Katie and Julia summoned a demon to save Penny and he astral projected about it? The demon couldn't save him. After Katie betraying Julia and Quentin, after summoning a literal demon, after all of this, it still doesn't work. First of all, Jade Taylor Emmy nomination literally when? Yeah, I know that Katie as a character is worth more than her relationship with Penny. Sure, we can all agree that. We can all read Judith Butler together and get over that hurdle right now. I love Katie and Penny's relationship so much, and like, if last season we were eating good, then this season we are cast of Yellow Jackets wearing Greek goddess attire, eating symbolically relevant food and devouring it. Jade Taylor and Arjun Gupta are so cinematic to me. Like, I could actually watch the two of them just play these characters for years and years to come. So yes, we are very sad that Penny has died. Except he was astral projecting when it happened, so he's kind of stuck as a ghost. His soul wasn't in his body when he died, so now he's just stuck in the astral realm and nobody can hear him. Serving nobody can hear you scream in space. Serving girl, help. Okay, season 3, episode 4, Penny Stands, where are you? Make some noise, baby. What's that? Is that the noise? I can hear it in my heart. He needs that noise now, truly more than ever. He's suffering. So this episode just basically follows Penny as he desperately tries to get literally anybody's attention and fails miserably every single time. It is like kind of gut-wrenching for me specifically as a Penny stan, as a member of the Coin Purse and Jingling. It is like rough. Like, he's astral projecting, watching his own funeral, and has to go like, why is nobody crying? Nobody cried at his funeral. That's like up. He's my princess. I love him so much. First of all, putting Quentin on my hit list once more, just for good measure, he doesn't know how to pronounce Penny's last name. Adioti, by the way. Quentin Coldwater, you are not seeing the kingdom of heaven for that. Katie, queen of the like,
I never even liked him, like, it's okay, like, I don't actually feel terrible about this at all because I'm fine, because I'm the toughest charge, like, I'm okay, I'm literally fine.
Goes, nobody knew him. I didn't even really know him. Me when I lie, I'm gonna throw up. This is the same scene where we find out Alice's whole thing for this season, which is magic bad. She's decided that magic is bad now. She thinks that it's bad and that it's a force that will inevitably corrupt people. Don't care. Didn't ask. Getting back to a relationship that I actually care about. So Penny is just in the room with Katie, who, again, can't hear him, and she's actually, like, looking for drugs. I don't know if we remember that Katie was briefly a heroin addict, but she was. Because she can't hear him, he's just, like, telling her everything that he never got the chance to say to her. Let me do a line reading real fast. I guess I always thought that we'd have normal problems. Like, one day we'd just look at each other and not know what to say, but we don't get to have normal problems. He's just saying this, and she's, like, actively spiraling, and so am I. I am an empath in this moment. I can't handle this, actually. Because he's a ghost, he's just kind of checking in on people now, because, like, what's he gonna do? So he sees that Julia is kind of weird. She gets a message from something that tells her to go check on Katie. And because of that, she just sprints upstairs and actually catches Katie overdosing. And she uses her magic to heal Katie, which is a thing we've never seen Julia do, by the way. So this is like a different kind of magic for her. It's fun. It's a nice like reconciliation scene for the two of them. Like, we're happy that Katie and Julia are friends again. Also, we meet Hyman. Hyman is so annoying, and purposefully so. Like, the writers are actively making fun of this character. That being said, this actor is so good. I love him. He's also in Watchmen, playing essentially the same character, and good for him, I say. He doesn't matter. I believe that he comes back in season 5, but he's a ghost. He's been stuck haunting Breakbills since the 1920s, and he's sort of like an audience surrogate. He's like, oh, I'm rooting for Quentin and Julia to get together, and Penny's like, what the fuck? Speaking of Quentin and Julia, they're on the hunt for that second key, baby. So the key was originally found in Fillory and brought back by Rupert Chatwin, the third Chatwin kid. There's Martin, who was the Beast and is now dead. There's Jane, who is the time loops lady. She's dead in the main plot line, but no promises. And then there's Rupert, and he's like the third one. We don't actually know that much about Rupert. Turns out he brought the key back with him to Breakbills and gave it to one of his friends. Oh, also, Fen and Elliot have canonically eaten human flesh. I don't know what you're going to do with that information. It doesn't matter to the overall plot. I just wanted you to know that. So it turns out that friend that Rupert Chatwin gave the key to was A, his gay lover, and B, was actually McAllister. I don't know if we remember Irene. So their new plan is to go to the McAllisters' house and see if the key is still lying around somewhere. So Quentin, Julia, and the Dean go to see Irene McAllister at the McAllister mansion, the McMansion, if you will. And they're sitting down having dinner, and it's actually kind of weird because there are like a lot of chores that are just doing themselves. But that's weird because there's no magic. And the McAllisters don't have magic because famously they were looking for that battery. So what gives? And they're like, oh yeah, it's part of the house, and they kept going. But like, that's not true. We all know that's not true. What's happening? What none of them can see, but what we can see, is that it's fairies. The fairies have like a really distinct look. Picture. They look like fairies, but they're just doing like household chores, and we know that's not like the fairies vibe. Also, they're like not really dressed as well as the fairies in Fillory, so like something weird is happening. Anyway, Julia does a locator spell because remember she has magic, and she finds the key. Yay, we have the key now. So they get back to the cottage, and Elliot and Fen show up. Yay, yay, yippee, happy. The way that Elliot and Q hug. Get me that live slug. The last scene in the episode is so funny. So remember how the first key has the special power to show you what a person is afraid of? We don't know what the second key does, right? So Elliot sits down and they're like, oh, we don't know what it does. We know it's called the truth key, but like everybody's a little bit too afraid to touch it because we don't want anything bad to happen. And Elliot is like, well, I don't care. I can handle a little bit of truth today. Like, give me the key. He grabs it and he's like, nothing happened. Oh, hey, Penny. Because he doesn't know that Penny died because he's been in Fillory this whole time. And like everybody else just starts freaking out. Oh, okay. Next episode, A Life in a Day. The world was literally kicked off its frickin' axis when this episode dropped. I'm not kidding. This is a revolutionary piece of cinema. If you have seen The Magicians before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That being said, I've made this mistake before. The roommate who I'm making this video series for, we watched The Magicians front to back together. We have a love for these characters, right? We have a third roommate. We wanted to try and get her into The Magicians, and we were like, oh, A Life in a Day is the best episode of The Magicians, which it is, or at least one of. So we were like, we're gonna show you Life in a Day. It's one of the best ones. You'll get into it, and then we'll go back and watch the whole thing. let me tell you right now, if you show your friends who you are trying to get into this television series, A Life in a Day, they're not going to like this show. I'm telling you right now because I love you and I love this show and I want people to watch this show. Don't drop them in on A Life in a Day. It does not hit the same unless you've seen the rest of the series. I'm sorry. I know it's not what you want to hear, but you have to hear it. All that being said, let me explain the entire plot of A Life in a Day to you. Katie, in rehab because remember, she relapsed. So Alice takes the truth key to go visit Katie so that she can see that Penny is like still kind of alive and, you know, not want to do drugs anymore, hopefully. Because that's how it works, remember? The scene of Katie seeing Penny, it's like serious to me. Like I can't talk about it. I actually can't discuss this. Go look it up for yourself. Go watch that for yourself. I actually have an NDA about that scene. Like, I can't talk about it. Fen and Frey's with them, by the way. I forgot it. I don't think I mentioned that, but she's also on Earth now. Fen and Frey go on a little girls' trip to New York, so they're not really in the plot this episode. They're with Todd, by the way. Yay, Todd! So Elliot and Quentin are going to try to find the next key. They're gonna go on the quest together. And to do that, they have to solve this thing called the mosaic. The mosaic is from the Fillory books, because remember, like, the books were based on true events. And basically, you have to use these colored tiles to, quote, show the beauty of all life. In the books, Jane Chatwin went to try to solve the mosaic, but right when she got there, someone else had solved it. So Q is like, it might be us. We might be the ones to solve the mosaic. Why not, right? So Q and Elliot use that teleportation key stuck into the Fillory clock, and they get launched back in time in Fillory. So because they're back in time, they still have magic, and it's a really, like, beautiful scene of Hale Appleman and Jason Ralph, like, who are, and let's be real with ourselves, two of the best actors on the show, like, just getting so excited. It's so gorgeous. It's so beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful scene. By the way, in case you were curious, this is the first appearance of Man Bun Quentin, who is literally a different character. Something about it, he is just so much more tolerable, so much more easy to deal with. He's just, like, less whiny, less irritating, less into Alice. Like, so let's just remember that there's the, like, ye old Fillory timeline that Quentin and Elliot are in, and then there's the stuff that's happening in modern day, and those are two different things. So just remember that these are happening in separate timelines, kind of. I just saw this post that was like, Anakin Skywalker was only 23 when he turned into Darth Vader. He should have been at the club. He wouldn't have done those things if he went to the club. First of all, he did go to the club. That happened in the second prequel. Second of all, Kid Eddie Moon's approach to being a Jedi. Love you guys. For my cool friends watching, that's not gonna make a lick of sense to you. If you get that reference, the Kid Eddie Mundi thing, you are a f***ing nerd. And I love you for it. Quentin and Elliot are in the past timeline. In the present Fillory timeline, Margot is left to rule all by herself, and the Fairy Queen is like, perfect, it's time to start making marriage alliances. Number one rule, if you are in a fantasy realm and you are a young and hot ruler, you're is gonna be making marriage alliances. I don't make the rules. That's just what happens in TV shows. I'm sorry. Remember that joke that Elliot had at the beginning of the season where he was like, this is a world with 2.5 countries. So we're about to meet the people from the half country. The half country is called the Floaters. They are from the floating mountains, and because magic is turned off, the mountains no longer float, so they're kind of suffering. The Fairy Queen has promised Margot's hand in marriage to their eldest son, Micah. Margot is not a fan of this. She is not into the idea of arranged marriages because she's a 21st century woman, but the Fairy Queen is like, being a queen is about sacrifice. Write that down. Luckily, when the rock people actually get there, she meets Micah for the first time, and he's hot. So she's like, never mind, I'm okay with arranged marriages now. It worked out for me, so it surely could present no possible issues for the future. He does pull up with his younger brother, Fomar, though, And Fomar is giving Joffrey Lannister realness. You know what I mean? Like, evil preteen. Back in the Mosaic timeline, Hale Appleman and Jason Ralph going for a drama desk nomination this episode. I don't know what producer walked up to them on set and said take 5, and they heard change lives, but it happened. So we get this montage of Elliot and Quentin working on the Mosaic, and it doesn't just take them like an hour or a couple days. It's like literal years. And we get the iconic line from this character, Ariel. Not super important outside of this episode, but she is a fruit vendor, and she goes, peaches, plums, mcallisters girls. I know I said that and a shiver ran down your spine. I heard it from here. Me in the future recording this, I heard you do it upon hearing that line. Peaches and plums, yeah. On their 1-year anniversary of working on the Mosaic, Quentin and Elliot kiss. Take 5, change lives. Cinema, movies, film. It's all I can say. So during this montage, they're like, oh, we don't need to talk about it, don't worry about it. Quentin goes and has a kid with Ariel, and then Ariel leaves halfway through, and Elliot is the father who stepped up. Like, in the Mosaic timeline, it gets to the point where, like, not only do they have kids, they have grandkids. Like, they are ancient. They put these men in wigs. They are doing drag. So much time has passed that Elliot fucking dies. Again, I say Jason Ralph Drama Desk nomination impending. So Elliot dies and Quentin buries him, and when he's digging the grave, he finds this last piece of the mosaic. The beauty of all life was this. So Quentin puts the new mosaic piece in and gets the key. And the second that he gets the key, who shows up but little British Jane Chatwin? And Quentin realizes that she needs the key to defeat the beast in, like, the main timeline the first time around. So after going through all of that, Quentin gives her the key. The key is the time key, and it's what made the time loops. It's the thing that actually ended up defeating the beast. It's the reason that Quentin and Elliot were alive in the main timeline. Do we remember this? Do we remember that Jane made 40 time loops and it wasn't until the 40th one that they killed the beast? Do we remember that? That's gonna be relevant later. So this is how they get the time loops. This is how Jane got the time magic. Elliot had to fucking die. Back in the main timeline, Margot's going to her wedding. First of all, they love to put Margot in the ugliest dresses humanly possible. Even when she's High Queen, it really is hit or miss. Like, it has the capacity to be so terrible. And her wedding dress was so terrible. They're at the altar, and right as they're saying I do, an axe on a rope swing chops off Micah's head, and evil little baby preteen Joffrey Lannister walks out. And Margot is, like, freaking out. She's so scared. Summer Bishel also heard change lives. So there's this custom in Fillory where if during a royal wedding the groom or bride is disposed of, it falls to their younger sibling to carry it through. And that just holds up even if they are the one to kill the older sibling. So Margot is basically forced into this marriage with little baby Tyrant. So that goes through. The fairy queen is like, yeah, you have to follow through with this. So the wedding happens. After the wedding, Margot gets an enchanted letter. In the past, when they had magic, Quentin, like, set up some sort of enchantment that basically would send this to Margot in the modern timeline. Don't worry about it, it works. If you think too hard about the timeline stuff, it will break your brain, so don't do it. Basically, she gets this note from Quentin that's like, hello, it is me, Quentin. I have long since died. Don't worry about it. Jane is alive and the Clock Barons, go get the key. So Jane Chatwin is in this thing called the Clock Barons. It's basically this little time bubble where you can exist through all of time at once. Again, I say, if you think too hard about it, it will hurt. Spare yourself. So Jane directs Margot to where her body on Earth 40 is buried. Again, I say don't worry about it. And she's like, the key was buried with me. Go get the key from there. So Margot, right after having to get married to the person that just killed her fiance, who is also 12, has to dig up a body. And the boys just get to go cottagecore for the episode. When will my girl know peace? God, okay. It breaks your brain, so don't worry about it. All that matters is that Margot got the key from Jane's body, and she goes to Elliot and Quentin right before they're about to step through the Fillory clock to die. Again, don't think about it too hard. Don't think. Clear your mind. Close your eyes, clear your mind. You are a vacant slate, and it is okay. We have now re-entered the main time. I feel like I'm going crazy. We have now re-entered the main timeline. Quentin and Elliot did not live an entire lifetime together. They don't know about that, okay? Cool. Before we get to the last scene of the episode, because I know the girls want to talk about the last scene of the episode. I know they want to do that. We're not going to talk about it yet. We need to catch up with Katie and Julia. Julia has a conversation with Our Lady Underground. We find out that the reason that Julia has magic is that Our Lady Underground took all of the magic from Reynard and gave it to Julia. She's going to freak out about this. She's going to make dumb decisions. Those decisions will go nowhere, so we're not going to talk about them. Katie goes to try to check herself out of the hospital, but they have footage of her talking to Ghost Penny, and obviously Ghost Penny doesn't show up on the footage, so they're like, you actually do have to stay. So now we have to add breaking Katie out of rehab to our to-do list. All right, live slugs in the audience. Let's talk about the last scene of the episode. This scene is so important, especially when it comes to season 4. This scene rewrote the frickin' book. If you take one scene away from this season, it should be this one, just purely based on like stuff we need to remember when we go forward, okay? Here's the last scene of the episode. Elliot and Quentin go back to Fillory post Margot's wedding. So that has happened. All of that happened in the timeline. They're sitting down and they see that one of the wedding gifts that they were given was a basket of peaches and plums. They get the fruit and they take a bite. Remember, they don't remember anything from the whole life that they lived together, right? So they take a bite from their peaches and their plums, and just all of the memories come back to them. All of the memories flood back. And it's like a really beautiful moment. During the Lifetime montage, we had this song that was playing underneath it. And then when they eat the peaches and the plums, like the song comes back in and you're like, yes, I can see what's happening because I understand the language of cinema. Yes, so movie. This is what Martin Scorsese was doing, I think. Someone get Hale Appleman an Oscar stat. I don't care what for. I don't even care if it's like a Lifetime Achievement Award. I personally think he deserves it. The way that he eats that piece of fruit in this scene, I cannot describe by any other word other than carnal. Beautiful episode. One of the highlights of the show, truly. Don't show it to your friends if this is their first episode of The Magicians. Season 3, episode 6. Margot is conspiring with the queen of the floating mountains that no longer float. They're sort of twirling their mustaches together because they both dislike the fairy queen. The mother-in-law, who is evil, and you can tell because she has an updo. She's like, I will help you conspire with the fairy queen, but you have to consummate the marriage with my son. And Margot is like, I'm actually not going to do that because I'm an adult and he's weird. This subplot does not super matter, but it's very important to me that you know that Margot gets out of this by lying to the little prince and telling him that have teeth. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. So Elliot returns to Fillory without Fen and Frey. They're still on their New York girls trip with Todd. So the fairy queen is like, Elliot, you need to get Margot to sleep with Prince Fomar, the little baby boy. And he agrees with her. So that's right. It's time for the obligatory mid-season Margot and Elliot fight. We have to have one every season. I should make a bingo card for next season. What would it include? It would include Katie having on-screen drug issues, Margot and Elliot mid-season fight, Quentin and Alice get back together again even though it makes no sense, and then the villain has a musical number. It's happened more than once. So Quentin goes on his little boating adventure and he is thriving. He is having the best time. And here's where I get to go on my Quentin tangent. I have talked a lot about the fact that I really have a distaste for Quentin in seasons 1 and 2. And part of that is because I think that it's a lot more rooted in the books, and I could not stand Quentin in the books. But I also think there is something to be said about the fact that, like, Quentin as a character in this show has organically grown in a way that is really beautiful to watch, because a lot of what season 1 was about, and honestly what a lot of this season is kind of about, is a deconstruction of the myth of the hero, right? This idea that, like, the hero is not always going to be someone who looks like Quentin. We can get into it in season 4, why that can get a little bit touchy when we talk about the magicians, because, like, if you know what happens to Quentin in season 4, you know what I'm talking about, and you know the interviews that I'm talking about where the writers and the showrunners were like, anything can happen to anyone. And again, we'll have that conversation when we get to season 4. Because of that, it's very safe to say that, like, a lot of what this show is interested in is deconstructing the myth of the hero and the hero's journey. Like, the whole point of Quentin's arc in season 1 is to realize that he's not the one that gets to defeat the beast. It was Alice, and then it gets to be Julia. And, like, season 2 is kind of about Quentin learning empathy because he treated Julia like fucking dog all season 1, and season 2 is about him realizing that, like, she has issues and, like, he needs to support her. Season 3 is in some ways upholding that, but it is also in some ways reversing that. What is really interesting about season 3 is that it does follow trappings of the hero's journey. This idea of the boat, this idea of, like, a literal storybook that you are following, you know, a by numbers quest. But also, season 3 is very interested in expanding what we qualify as a hero. There's obviously a reason that every single person gets to participate in this quest to some capacity every single time. The idea of this season is that they would not have succeeded in this mission if it had been for lack of any of them, and it's like every single person brings a very unique skill set that is necessary in order to achieve this goal, right? It's a power of friendship story. But it's interesting in regards specifically to Quentin because he has gone through this whole character journey where he realized that, like, he doesn't get to be Mr. Protagonist all the time, always, where, like, he's now being put in a position where he kind of does. He is the one that's taking point on the Keys quest, and it's, like, very cathartic as an audience member to see him, like, actually come into his own. He's more confident. He's more, like, happy, which is awesome. Like, he's less insufferable. He's not bogged down by these, like, minute relationships that have haunted him for the past 2 seasons. That's really, really nice to see because you get the impression that a Quentin from season 1 would not be approaching this quest in the same way. So it's good. What I'm saying is that it's good writing. What I'm saying is that Quentin as a character deserves this moment, and I'm very happy for him. This is the episode where it goes to though, so prepare for that. So they're on the boat. It's Quentin, it's Harvey Guillen, the royal map maker, who's very fun, and they run into Poppy. Poppy is a weird character. She's kind of thrown into this story to be a new love interest for Quentin, and there's like a world in which she's perfect for him. Like, she's nerdy, she's like fun and spunky, she's sort of like not reserved in a way that Alice really is. She also pisses me off so much. She shows up and just causes so many problems on purpose and then immediately dips. I don't necessarily love this character. She doesn't piss me off in the same way that Alice does, for sure, but I have very little love for Poppy. So she's from Breakbills, and specifically she was on that spring break trip that Josh was on, that Victoria was on, and that everybody else who got killed by the Beast was on. She survived by taking a detour and getting stranded in the ocean. She's also really into dragons. It's not relevant in this season. It kind of becomes more relevant later. So Quentin and Poppy are talking, and we realize that Poppy just has the key, and Quentin is like, oh my god, that's so perfect. Can we have it? Like, we really need it. It's sort of like the quest to turn all magic back on. And Poppy is like, yes, exactly. Here you go, have it. And it's halfway through the episode, so you know that something bad is about to start happening. The key. How do I explain the key? This is the depression key, and basically what happens is that the last person to have held the key will have a manifestation of all of their darkest thoughts appear to them as like a duplicate of themselves, and it will just hound them over and over with like thoughts that you would think if you have depression. The title Depression Key does say it all. The depression monster for Quentin is also played by Jason Ralph, and Jason Ralph is so excellent at playing evil, and I think that the writers realized that this season, because this is the second time he gets to do it in like the course of 5 episodes, and it is not the last time this season that Jason Ralph is playing evil. It's very heartbreaking to hear Quentin like literally hear, and you, the audience, by extension, literally hear all of the things that go through his head. Because Quentin famously has, like, a terrible mental health situation. But Jason Ralph is so excellent at playing both parts in this conversation. The issue with the depression monster is that he doesn't want to pass it off to somebody else because he's, like, worried that if something worse would happen to them, because like not only is he sister suffrage, but he's also a martyr. He is like so dangerously close to drastic actions that he's like, Harvey Guillen, you need to tie me to the mast of this ship and not let me go until we get to White Spire, the castle. Unfortunately, when this happens, Harvey Guillen, the royal mapmaker, ends up getting the key, and Quentin is tied to the mast, so he can't do anything about it, so he just has to watch this. He has to watch Harvey Guillen, like, walk off the ship. He walks the plank. It's very sad. Not only does he walk the plank, a fucking dragon eats him. Luckily, because remember, Poppy is really into dragons, and also we found this out last season, dragons are gatekeepers, so when they eat you, you don't just die. You get teleported to the Underworld. So their new plan is that they're going to have to find another dragon. Back in the marriage plotline, which is so weird to say, basically Elliot talks the Fairy Queen into letting him take Margot and the evil 12-year-old on a honeymoon. But rest easy, everybody, it was a ruse. He and Margot are actually trying to go scope out this, like, distant-ish village in the Fillory territory, because they heard, like, there's been some fairy meddling going on. Margot and Elliot get to this, like, village. They realize that the fairies have been terraforming Fillory, because Margot's been to the fairy realm before, and it's, like, damp and swampy, and, like, that's what they're doing here. That's all of the little errands that the Fairy Queen was making Margot run, like all of those earthworms that she had to pick up with her own hands, they're there now. Not only are they terraforming, the fairies have been laying eggs. Fairies are born from eggs that look like mushrooms, and there's like thousands of them. So Elliot is like, hum, I wonder what we should do. And then Margot just runs by with like 10 eggs in her arms, and she's like, we're taking hostages. Season 3, episode 7, Elliot and Margot bring the fairy eggs back to the physical kids' cottage on Earth, and they're gonna hide them there so that they can make a deal with the Fairy Queen, because the Fairy Queen cares a lot about every single one of the fairies. That is like a big character trait that she has. She is like no fairy left behind. In order to get the Depression Monster key, because remember, Harvey Guillén died with it in his hand, like the key was also teleported to the Underworld with him. So they need to go to the Underworld. So the library has a branch in the Underworld, and Poppy, dragon extraordinaire, reveals that the way that the library sends books back and forth isn't with travelers. They have small dragons that eat the books that need to go to the Underworld, so that way, like, they can just drop them in whenever they want. So the plan to get to the Underworld is to have Penny possess a book, because he's been learning how to possess objects. He's going to possess a book, they're going to drop it down the chute in the library, and he's going to pop out in the Underworld and get the key. Does that make sense? Are we catching up? However, in order to get to the chute where they can drop the Penny book down, they need a traveler to get them to the satellite branch of the library so that they can drop the Penny book. And the only other traveler that they know is Victoria, who has never known peace. Do we remember Victoria? She was in season 1. She was the voice that Penny kept hearing. She was held hostage by the beast. So Fen and Frey get back to the physical kids' cottage with Todd, and like Elliot is like meet-cuting with them, and it's sweet. They seem like they're a little family. The three of them have bonded. Meanwhile, Margot is like, Todd, get over here. Frey cannot find out about the fairy eggs that we have hidden here, because she will 100% snitch on us. Under quite literally no circumstance is she to find out about this. So Margot and Elliot zoom back to Fillory. Turns out while they were gone, the Fillorians started a civil war with the floaters. Whoopsie. Everybody's in a bad mood in Fillory, sorry to say. So they propose a deal to the Fairy Queen, and they're like, we will give you your eggs back, and in exchange, we want your bathtub. And the Fairy Queen is like, why? Margot and Elliot's plan is to give the bathtub to the people of Fillory as like a public fountain, and by including them in the deal, every person in Fillory will then be able to see all the fairies. So they'll be able to realize that, like, the fairies are the ones that have been everything up, not Margot and Elliot, okay? Like, do we see the vision? Do we see the plan? Because remember, like, they need to be included in the fairy deal in order to see the fairies. We see, like, where the logic is coming in, yes? I would also really like to highlight this moment where Elliot is, like, kind of giving fight or flight. Like, he is a little bit nervous about all of this because he kind of thinks that maybe they're not actually going to be able to make anything better. And he's like, we can just go back to Earth if we, like, really want to. And Margot says, quote, I didn't get a blood test to tell me to be High Queen. I chose it, and I've had to fight for every shred of authority. Again, like, highlighting the fact that Margot is sort of the one that's, like, actually stepping forward and taking charge and, like, becoming a really, really good queen. Say what you will about the Fairy Queen, but, like, she is sort of molding Margot into being a really excellent ruler. Okay, so over on Earth, Julia goes to chat with Irene McAllister, Irene McMansion herself. And we see Irene do some magic, and Julia is like, wait, what? And Irene pulls out this little vial of white powder. She says that it's the, like, crushed up excrement of a magical creature, and when you, like, inhale it, you get magic back. And, like, the minutia does not matter. What you need to know is this does kind of amount to in-universe cocaine that gives you magic. And it's about to become really plot relevant, okay? So Poppy and Q go to find Victoria in order to get her in on the whole, like, invade the library plan. She does not like Poppy at all. The way they win her over is they give her the penny key, and we kind of get like closure for that plot line, which is really, really nice. So that's good. We find out that Victoria is actually working with Harriet. Do we remember Harriet? Harriet's getting roped back into the plot, okay? We're getting some more Harriet content. And because Harriet's in the plot now, they need to convince her, which means that they need Katie, because you cannot have one without the other. Unfortunately, Katie is still in the psych ward. They bust her out. It does not super matter how, but what does matter is this one specific scene where, in order to, like, get the best of an orderly, Katie gives him the key that allows you to see Penny. The orderly is like, yo, what? And then while he's distracted, Katie just... And again, I'm not bringing this sequence up because it's plot relevant. I'm bringing this sequence up because Penny just, like, heart eyes at that. He is so down bad for this girl who can throw a mean right hook. I'm obsessed with them. I'm also just, like, a very big fan of the fact that they let Arjun Gupta, like, be silly this season. For whatever reason, they haven't really let him, like, be that big of a comedic presence in this show. I'm gonna miss Arjun Gupta being goofy. So Frey finds out about the eggs and just immediately snitches. Oh my god, does she snitch to the Fairy Queen, like, immediately. Backstab, betrayed. So this happens in front of Margot, Elliot, and Fen, and you're like, oh no, they're and then Margot is like, we'll do it. We'll kill the kid. Like, we'll kill the eggs. We don't care. And then the Fairy Queen takes Frey and she, like, holds a knife to her throat, and you're like, whoa. So the second that Frey is, like, all of a sudden being used as leverage, Elliot just folds immediately. He is like, I am not going to be the dad that lets their kid get hurt. Under no circumstances am I doing that. Good. Yes. Love to see it. Love to see daddy issues circle all the way back around to a net positive. We're happy about that. But right after he says that, Frey goes, no, but I'm not actually... What was that? What was that? Anyway. That's right, guys. Frey is not actually Fen and Elliot's kid. She's just like a random human that the fairies got in a different deal. She's just been lying and pretending that she's their kid so that they get endeared to her so that she could be used as leverage in a scene like this. Turns out Fen's actual kid died in childbirth. Like, there was never any kid. Because of this, yes, Elliot and Margot close the deal with the Fairy Queen. All of the Fillorians can see the fairies now. Great. Fen is kind of doing terribly. She is like, I'm gonna be calling out of a few episodes. I'm gonna be sitting this one out on Earth, I think. And everybody in the audience went, please, take your time, girl. Oh, Poppy and Q also hook up this episode. I don't care. I'm sorry. Why? So in the last scene of the episode, Margot and Elliot are back in Fillory, and they're like, oh my god, yes, like, everybody is going to be able to see the fairies and, like, understand that we're not actually bad rulers, and, like, they're gonna love us again. Like, nobody's ever gonna be mad at us ever again. And that's wrong. That's wrong. Even if that were the case, they've still been flopping. The people are mad at them. So mad, in fact, that they take them hostage. That's right, they decide to do an uprising. Lol, yikes. Okay, season 3, episode 8. This is framed with the narrative device of 6 short stories about magic, okay? So when I explain the plot of this episode, I'm going to need you to understand that, like, all of it takes place over, like, this is the mic, by the way. I say it every episode, but, like, phone in a sock, that's the microphone. If an episode takes place over this much time, like, we're going to be going back and forth quite a lot because, like, different stuff happens following each character for a certain amount of times, and sometimes that will overlap. So the first story that we hear is the Penny story. Penny gets to the Underworld successfully. Immediately he goes to find the royal map maker. We're so excited that people can see him again. That's great, excellent, amazing, yay, so happy for him. Also very obsessed with the fact that in order to bribe, like, the bureaucrats to kind of, like, let him move around, he just tells them what's been happening in Game of Thrones, which is already kind of funny because, like, they're dead, so they obviously, like, aren't keeping up with the new seasons. What makes it very funny is the fact that Penny is too cool to watch Game of Thrones, so he's just, like, making up plot points. He's like,
yeah, the British guy comes in, and he, like, at this point, he has 8 dragons now.
And the bureaucrats are just eating it up. They're like,
wow, nobody does a twist like them.
That's really funny. That's good. That's good. Game of Thrones for hot people. Officially going to be the next YouTube video, by the way. So look forward to that once you watch this. It will take 4 months. Unfortunately, when Penny does finally find the royal mapmaker, his name's Benedict, by the way. I've just been calling him Harvey Guillen. And he's like, great. Give me the key. And Benedict is just like, oh, I thought you were, like, coming here to say hi to me. And Penny is like, no, give me the key. I need the key. We need to, I have, like, on a time crunch. I need the key. And Benedict is like, well, the library took it, so I don't even have it. Bitch. Oh, also, after that, we get, jump scare, Sylvia. Sylvia's back. Hate Sylvia. Sylvia's so annoying. Anyway, if we remember back to season 2, Sylvia is that, like, petulant little teenager that was hanging around with Penny while he was working at the library, and she died in the poison room so that he could get out. Because she died, but she still has a contract with the library for, like, another billion years or something, she's working in the Underworld branch. And so Sylvia's been hanging out with the person that has been writing all of the books of every single person's life. And it's Cassandra from, like, Greek mythology, from the Trojan War, which is already a weird choice. And then on top of that, Cassandra is played by the Alice actress. And, like, not in, like, she, like, disappeared into the role. It's like Penny is like, wait, she looks exactly like Alice. Why does she look exactly like Alice? And, you not, this is never explained. We, like, never find out what this whole thing was. Maybe it's supposed to be like, oh, nobody believes Alice when she says that magic is bad, but people should have believed her. But it's like, I don't like Alice. So, what now? Next is the Poppy story. This is where we see Victoria and how she does the traveling thing. Because remember, a traveler can teleport just, like, inherently. Like, that's not affected. But they can't transport other people without magic. Except they can do blood magic. Because they are, like, technically magical creatures as travelers, so their blood is magical. So Victoria creates this thing called a mirror bridge, where basically you, the traveler, use your blood to draw sigils on one mirror, and then you can, like, teleport people in this, like, mirror dimension, and they can, like, walk through and exit through another mirror somewhere else. But the catch is that she has to stay and feed the sigils, because if they dry up, then the mirror bridge breaks, which is bad. So not only is this, like, a bad mission to be on, they are also on, like, a crazy time crunch, because Victoria could very realistically die. And if she does, A, she dies, which is not good, obviously, and B, they'd be stuck in the library because the bridge would break. So the gang that's going through the mirror bridge is Poppy, Quentin, Katie, Harriet, because she thinks that the library has a battery and she wants it. And then also they're meeting Penny there, right? Good. They ask Alice and she's like, no, I do not want to. No. Except when they get to the library, they run into Alice, which is weird, right? Also, Poppy catches like exactly half of a whiff of something weird happening. Like, she sees Alice, she's like, I'm not sticking around for this. And then she just dips. No more Poppy. Why was she in this episode? So the next short story is the Alice one. We get to find out what she's up to this episode. She meets up with this man. I don't think that he has a name. I will exclusively refer to him as Evil Australian Librarian. He's also a traveler that's semi-relevant, okay? Alice meets up with the Evil Australian Librarian. He confirms to her that the library does in fact have some sort of power source. They can do magic. Alice says that she just wants a library card. She has the traveler librarian take her to Zelda. Zelda's back, by the way. So he takes her to Zelda, and Alice is like, I just want to complete the work that I was doing as a Niffin. I want a library card. Zelda is like, okay, perfect. Time to scheme. So Zelda is like, oh, okay, you want a library card. That's perfectly fine. You just need to do one thing for us in exchange. Have you heard of the quest for the 7 keys? Oh, I need to conveniently leave right now. So this is the point in the greater timeline when Quentin runs in and sees Alice, and he's like, Alice, are you working with the library now? And she's like, don't worry about it. Okay, we get an Elliot short story, and it's very short. We drop in on him and Margot in Fillory. They are currently on trial by the people. And this is some goofy shit. And this is like why I love this show so much. It's just so silly. Margot and Elliot requested a trial by combat. You know, like they do in shows like this, right? But because it's Fillory, and they have talking animals there, and they'd never heard of a trial by combat, they thought that they said that they wanted a trial by wombat. So they get a wombat judge, and the wombat finds them guilty. Also very relevant that the scene that we are dropped in on is Elliot going through this whole speech saying that, like, Fillory is a dump, and they would be nowhere without him, and that children of Earth are the only reason that Fillory has magic, and, like, the only reason that they're worth anything, and, like, yap, 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 right? And, like, at the end, he is like, but we love it. But remember that he said the first stuff, too, you know? Okay, next we get the Fen short story. So Fen is passed out in the physical kids' cottage, and jump scare Irene Adler shows up to talk to Julia. Except, because Fen has made a fairy deal before, she clocks that Irene has a fairy following her around. And Fen thinks that's weird. Immediately, like, so completely 100% certain in her heart that the fairies are manipulating Irene, that Irene is probably, like, unaware of what's going on, and that the fairies are evil. They're evil according to Fen. Fen is anti-fairy. So, because Julia can't really see the fairies, she's like, Fen, you have to help me, because you're the only one that can talk to them, and I need you to, like, figure out what's going on. So Fen is like, fine, okay. So she goes to talk to Irene's fairy, whose name is Sky. The sky displayed here, picture of the sky. And Fen comes in, like, hot. She's like, ugh, and of course you're all evil because you're fairies, and, like, you know, you're so powerful, and, like, yap, 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 yap. And the gag is that Sky doesn't know that fairies, like, are powerful. She doesn't even know about the fairies in Fillory, like, at all. She has no concept of, like, the fairy queen. Like, she just assumes that, like, all fairies are supposed to be these, like, servant figures. And Fen starts, like, kind of freaking out about that. Not only this, but Julia and Fen discover that the powder that the McAllisters have been snorting, the cocaine that gives you magic, yeah, they come from magical creatures. It's crushed up fairy bones. So, like, on top of just having this, like, weird relationship with the fairies, they're literally, like, hacking off their limbs and grinding them down so that they can do, like, party trick magic. It's, like, it's messed up, okay? It's, like, up. Okay, the next story that we get is Harriet's, and because Harriet is deaf, this entire sequence is entirely silent. At Magicians, you ate this. I'm giving you kisses on the cheeks for doing this. This is really, like, I'm very happy with how this sequence goes. Basically, what we find out is that the reason that Harriet is so, like, anti-library, anti-establishment is because she grew up in the library, because she's Zelda's daughter. Remember, the library exists outside of time and space, so, like, Harriet's been aging and Zelda has been the same age, which is wild. Like, once again, try not to say mother challenge, literally unbeatable this time. So Harriet ran away from the library when she was like a teenager, like college age. She didn't agree with the library's stance on, like, we're the controllers of information. We get to pick and choose, like, who has access to this. She didn't agree with the classism of that. And it's, like, very much, like, summarizing this entire episode's message of, like, who can you trust? You know what I mean? So in the modern day, Harriet and Katie are at the library on the mission, and they're looking for that battery that they think that the library has. Turns out, not a battery. They're in bed with the McAllisters. They're getting some of the evil fairy bone dust cocaine, which, one, confirms that the library is evil. Two, Katie locks eyes with drugs that give you magic, and me personally, I started hearing alarm bells inside of my head. I was like, danger, danger, get her out of there. Please, extraction team, we need you to go. Go now, move, move, move. So they go to split because they're like, okay, we figured out, like, we got what we came for. We need to get out of here. So they're running, and then who pulls up but Zelda? Of course it's Zelda. Of course she shows up. So Zelda and Harriet have what I can only describe as the ultimate mother off. And not only did they leave no crumbs, the building literally collapsed. Like, a desolation ensued. The library did not literally collapse, I should make that clear. So Katie and Q, like, jump through the mirror bridge, they're running. Harriet and Zelda are having their mother off, and Harriet is like, so Harriet's on her way out. She jumps into the mirror bridge, because remember, it's enter the, like, weird mirror dimension where Victoria still is, and then the other mirror. So Harriet's in there with Victoria. Everybody else is already out. Before they can make it through the other end of the mirror bridge, the evil Australian traveler librarian pulls up and smashes the mirror, which breaks the mirror bridge, which means that Harriet and Victoria are stuck in the mirror dimension. That's right, evil Australian librarian killed Harriet. Like, they're dead. Basically, they're dead. I'm sorry to say that they're dead. Ugh, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the episode, Penny realizes that he was an asshole to Harvey Guillen. He goes, he apologizes. Harvey Guillen is like, I had the key the whole time. I needed you to not be an asshole to me. And he gets the key, blah, blah, blah. And what happens? Sylvia betrays Penny. Of course she did. Of course, my personal nemesis, Sylvia, ruined it for everybody. She totally betrays him. She traps him in the Underworld branch of the library. I am going to put a hit out on her. I know she's already dead. I'm going to complete the mission. Okay, getting over that. Season 3, episode 9, yet another cultural reset. We've been getting hit after hit after hit. It's time for all that, Josh. This is such a good episode of The Magicians. This is such a good episode of The Magicians, and I honestly can't even begin to describe how good it is. I don't know if you remember my season 2 video where I talked about the Margot and Elliot One Day More impromptu musical number. It's like that, except it's the full episode, and this is the official beginning of The Magicians' season tradition of just having one insane musical episode every single season for no reason other than, like, they kind of just want to. Okay, We're back in the physical kids cottage. Katie and Q just arrive. Alice is already there. Immediately, Katie books it to the truth key, the one that lets you see dead people, because she's like, well, I need to make sure Penny got back. And she picks it up and she doesn't see him. And what if I kill somebody? What if I throw a temper tantrum live right now? So they open up the Book of the Seven Keys, and instead of getting a little chapter, they get a musical score, which is a little weird, right? But they go to the piano and they play it, and then what's this? They're magically transported to a party in the physical kids cottage? Wow, I wonder who caused all that to happen. I wonder who caused all that. Josh? But, like, the party is kind of weird, right? Like, all of the extras are kind of slightly sinister, and none of the doors work, which is maybe worse. I would like to also mention that the first person that they see in this weird party dimension is Todd, and all three of the main characters audibly groan. I love Todd. I love the Todd gag. It makes me giggle every time. So Todd, who is kind of a little bit off, is like, oh my god, guys, it's time for the king of party o'clock. And all three of them are like, what the f*** are you talking about? And then who should enter but Josh Hoberman. Where's my boy? Josh Hoberman up in the corner. And not only does he enter, he enters singing a cover of Wham Bam. I have no notes. This episode rocks. But it is a little bit weird. So, like, there's magic in the party dimension, which is already weird, but it's, like, only party trick magic. Like, they can only make, like, smoke into different shapes, or, like, you know, refill drinks and stuff like that. And on top of that, anytime that any of them express, like, a little bit of discomfort, anytime a single one of them is like, and by the way, like, this is kind of weird, the entire ensemble just stops and goes like, until they're like, just kidding, pass me a shot. Like, they get mad at them when they kill the vibe. Suspicious behavior for sure. Exiting the party dimension, but catching up with the party people, Margot and Elliot flopped their trial. Ooh, yeah, that wombat found them guilty. So they are sentenced to death, but in, like, a very petite sleigh of a moment, they are allowed to choose how they die. So they decide to opt for, quote, death by infinite waterfall, because they're like, okay, well, if the waterfall is infinite, we have time to figure something out. Except the infinite waterfall in question, yeah, that's gonna be the edge of Fillory, which is in fact flat. Unlike Earth, flat earthers, please log out. Tick Pickwick is chaining Elliot and Margot in the Muntjac, because that's the boat that's gonna send them over the edge. And Margot and Elliot are like, oh my god, Tick, you're, like, totally gonna get us out of this, right? Because, like, this is one of our little sneakies, like, you're double agenting, and I see you doing that. How are we getting out of here, Pooks? And Tick is like, I am not. I'm evil, actually. He's like, you guys are the worst. You are really, really bad at being rulers. Everybody hates you, and with good reason. I am going to be king now. Can I just say, Rizwan Manji, you ate that scene so hard. I need to see this man doing Shakespeare. Like, I would kill to see him in, like, a production of Richard III. I feel like he would kill it. Tick sends them on their merry way. It's just Elliot and Margot in the Muntjac. And Margot is like, hey, girly at boat. You know how we kind of have, like, a besties vibe? I'd really love, like, you know, if you're feeling generous, to, you know, maybe cash in on a favor right now, please. But she's kind of not getting anywhere. Elliot's, like, in his fifis. He's very much like, oh, like, maybe Tick's right, maybe we were bad rulers, maybe, like, you know, maybe we were never good for Fillory. Maybe they are right for sending us off this infinite waterfall. Like, who were we to say that, you know, what we were doing was even helping? And Margot is like, okay, we didn't pick to be high rulers. It happened. And, like, yeah, maybe we didn't make it perfect, but we at least made it better for a minute, and that has to count for something. Which, once again, hyping up the fact that Margot, like, kind of more than Elliot, like, really cares about Fillory. So, back in Party Dimension, Alice and Q are sort of on their Scooby Gang and they're like, okay, we're gonna sneak around and try and figure out if, like, we can figure out what's going on here. Katie, can you give us a distraction? My personal prayers are all being answered by this episode. Katie distracts them by doing a burlesque number. God bless Jade Taylor. She and Hale Appleman are the only people in this cast who can actually sing. And she's just getting to show off her range. She's killing it. And, like, can I just say, while she's distracting people, Katie has this, like, little flirty exchange with one of the female extras. And I just feel like Katie Penny bye for bye. Did somebody say Katie Penny bye for bye? Because I heard Katie Penny bye for bye. Are we on the same page about that? Katie Penny bye for bye? Is anybody else feeling Katie Penny bye for bye? So while Katie's distracting them, yeah, Quentin and Alice do kidnap Josh. So they trap him in one of the rooms upstairs, and they're like, all right, Josh, squeal. And Josh, ooh, oh. He fires back at them like, okay, yeah, like, maybe something hinky is happening here, but, like, really quickly, name 2 things about me that aren't I'm a naturalist and I'm a stoner. And then he says, okay, where did I grow up? Where did I go to undergrad? When was the last time that you even saw me? And Quentin and Alice both can't answer. And then, like, you in the audience are like, oh my god, wait a second. When was the last time that we saw Josh? And it's been a while. Blah, blah, blah. Katie does a magic trick where it seems like she's still downstairs, but she really, like, sneaks upstairs. So she's participating in the Gagatondra of Josh Hoberman. So Josh is like, you guys don't actually care about me. I don't care if, like, the party dimension isn't real. I'm staying here because at least they like me here. And he dips. And Alice puts the pieces together that weird Todd is actually not Todd. It's a demon, and it's specifically, and I'm going to reference my notes so I pronounce this even a little bit correct, a Traumeister, which is a German party demon. Basically, he thrives on the joy and the party and the, like, you know, the serotonin of others. That's how he gets his num-nums. Pivoting so fast to the Fen and Julia plotline, emotional whiplash imminent. Fen, even though she knows that what is actively happening to the fairies is up, is still like, what if we left them alone? What if we let the McAllisters just keep doing this? And Julia is like, Fen, no, we are not going to do that. So Julia meets up with Sky, the fairy that they were talking to earlier, and she starts to show her how to do magic, because the McAllisters fairies don't know that they can do magic. Except, uh-oh, it looks like there's a curse on the McAllister fairies, because the second that Sky starts to do magic, her, like, eyes start bleeding. So there's a curse on these little necklaces, collars, that all of the fairies wear, where if any of them do magic, it kills them instantly. Okay, back in the party dimension, now that we're all caught up. They find the key that they're looking for. Katie picks it up and immediately starts hearing everybody in her head. Not just her, Quentin, and Alice, everybody. All of the questers. And I'm talking Julia. I'm talking Margot and Elliot. I'm talking Penny in the Underworld. So this is the Unity key, and it will be referred to from here on out as the walkie-talkie key. You know who else gets picked up by the key? Josh, which means that they have to rescue him because he's a part of the quest. He's one of the questers. So Quentin's master plan to recruit Josh, to make him feel included, is to do the same music spell that Margot did for the One Day More number. And they just all burst out into Under Pressure by David Bowie. Jump scare, yet another outfit. Fleetwood Mac, Target t-shirt, 2 new tattoos. Everybody is jealous and wants to me so bad. I'm hoping that the hair gives like disheveled 90s celebrity and not I woke up 20 minutes ago, but 2 things can definitely be true at the same time, so we're just gonna go with it. The performance of Under Pressure in season 3 of The Magicians is actually a thing that I personally believe needs to be studied in not just film colleges, but possibly political science ones because of the impacts that it had on the world around it at the time. Let's run down what happens during the number. First of all, Jade Taylor, Hale Appleman putting on their sneakers because they were doing laps during this song. It's crazy what they were doing. Okay, let's see. During this number, 3 very important things happen, and I'm going to come down them in levels of importance. Number 1, Julia's god magic just takes the wheel and she manages to heal Sky. Number 2, the muntjac goes over the edge of Fillory and then it's falling. Hale Appleman as Elliot Waugh hits the high note, the why? And as he's hitting the high note, the muntjac begins to fly. Number 3, Katie hears Ghost Penny singing from beyond the grave, and she gives a little smile, and that's very important to me. Elliot and Margot are safe on the muntjac. Josh, Quentin, Alice, Katie all get safely home from the glam demon party. Season 3, episode 10, the girls are fighting again. So Alice is kind of at Q because he let Katie take one of the keys to go off on Penny bullshit, as she's prone to do. And she has the audacity to be like,
"Oh, wow, so you trust a heroin addict more than you trust me?"
Girl, you have tried to kill them on multiple occasions, and Katie is the realest one in the group. Don't test me. Julia and Fen go to meet up with Irene, and they're trying to do some light sleuthing to figure out if they can get the collars that magically kill fairies off, and in exchange for this information, Irene says that she wants a new fairy. So now Julia and Fen have to find one of those. I don't know, I feel like maybe these 2 are not the best sleuths, but that might just be me. Their plan to get this new fairy is that they're going to go and meet with the fairy queen, and they're gonna be like, "No, you just have to pretend to be the McAllisters' new fairy, and it's gonna be very embarrassing and humiliating for you, but this is for the greater good." Also, Fen is like, "You took my toes and also my baby, so I feel like maybe you kind of owe me one." Penny has a lot of going on with the Sylvia plotline, but I hate Sylvia so unbelievably much, so I'm gonna glaze over that. So the fairy queen goes with Fen and Julia to the McAllisters, and she's like, "I'm just a humble little baby fairy, I'm a baby little fairy, and I've never done nothing to nobody." But she, like, goes and she sees the fairies and they're being treated terribly, and she gives this very beautiful speech about how they're, like, beautiful, glorious creatures, and Candace Kane, you're always going to be famous to me. While she's giving this speech, Fen gets the information on this machine that the McAllisters say they have to remove the collars on the fairies, and it is a guillotine. They remove the heads, not necessarily the collars. Sorry, I'm doing like a transatlantic accent today. I don't know why. So we discover that these collars, the reason you can't take them off is because they're actually part of the fairy deal that was made with the McAllisters. The history doesn't matter, and that's not why you're here, but basically a long time ago, a very desperate fairy made a deal with the McAllisters, and now, like, all of the fairies on Earth have to deal with their bullshit. So the fairy queen reveals that there is a way to reverse a fairy deal, which of course everybody is about, because they're like, why was this never on the table before? And the fairy queen is like, oh, well, this is where our power comes from. If people know that we can go back on the deals, then they're going to want us to go back on the deals. And, like, we need to save this for when it really matters. And it's, like, a hard decision for her to reverse this fairy deal. Anyway, because the fairy deal gets reversed by the fairy queen, the McAllisters can't actually see the fairies anymore. And because they don't have the collars to worry about anymore, they go sicko mode. They go crazy. The only McAllister that makes it out is Irene, number one evil wench. So because of the power of friendship that is now instilled between the Fairy Queen and Julia, Fairy Queen reveals that there is actually one of the 7 keys in the fairy realm, which is great. But then she's like, you can't have it though. Basically, it's what's powering the fairy realm, and, like, if they give it to the questers, the fairies are gonna suffer. And one thing about the Fairy Queen is that she will have the fairies' best interest in mind. Season 3, episode 11. It feels incredibly worth mentioning that season 3 is 13 episodes long, and I would say with pretty full confidence that season 3, episode 9 through the season finale is just, like, the best 5-episode run that we get in the whole series. All of these episodes are hit after hit after hit. And it's not just because the writing is particularly good, although it is. I think it's also because they're doing the thing that I like about the magicians, in that they're not really taking it too seriously, and that they're just kind of, like, trying stuff. So we got the musical episode, and then we got this harrowing horror sequence with the McAllisters. This episode is where we get the multiverse. So I'm gonna try to explain this as succinctly as I can, but as I mentioned before, whenever time shenanigans or, like, multiple universe shenanigans gets introduced into this show, just kind of hits the fan, and you just have to roll with the punches. So if I'm explaining something and it doesn't make sense, please know that it doesn't make sense in the show either, and you're just going to have to accept it. Alright, season 3, episode 11. We're gonna start off baby and note that Elliot and Margot are technically on the run right now because Tick has put a bounty out on their head. Also, Margot refers to the Fairy Queen as Tinker. Julia and Josh are yonked out of their timeline into a Tesla flexion. We encountered these so briefly in season 2, in, like, the middle of the season, where nobody was paying attention. Basically, a Tesla flexion is a way for a person in one alternate universe to talk to a person in another alternate universe. The one that they're yonked into is actually the 23rd time loop timeline. We remember the time loops, yes. This is a thing that we remember. They're currently in timeline 40, which is the one where they finally defeated the Beast. Timeline 23 is actually the one that Quentin and Julia talked to the 23rd timeline, Alice, in season 2, and she was the last survivor of the Beast because shenanigans, and she got really into shades, and it was like a whole thing. Anyway, Josh and Julia from the 40th timeline are yonked into the 23rd timeline's Tesla flexion, and they meet Josh 23. Julia's a little bit iffy on him because she thinks that something shady or perhaps even sinister is going on, but they sort of go bug-eyed moment when they hear that the Beast in the 23rd timeline is still alive, and even worse, he has magic even though the 23rd timeline doesn't. And Josh 23 drops that he thinks it's because the Beast has this fancy little key around his neck, to which Julia and Josh 40 go, so they use the time key that Elliot and Quentin used to go back in time in Fillory to go to timeline 23. And Julia is like, I don't understand, like, what are the rules? And Josh goes, I don't know either. They are very inconsistent. So you write that down. Oh, also, Marina's back. Marina's alive in the 23rd timeline. She's working with Josh. Happy to see a girl employed. Josh, 23, does not super matter. He and Marina roofie Julia and Josh 40. So, like, what am I supposed to do? Trust him? So Marina and Josh 23 reveal that in this timeline, the Beast is looking for Julia for some undisclosed reason. So their plan is that they're going to trade Julia and Josh to the Beast in order to get safe passage. And Julia is like, okay, well, why don't we big brain it for 2 seconds? Just pretend to give me over to the Beast, and then I'll just cast the Rhinoman Ultra at him and kill him, and, like, that will solve all of our problems. And Marina and Josh are like, when, you in what magic? And then Julia goes God mode briefly, and they're like, oh, okay, we didn't know about that, we're very sorry. Also, Josh 23, who is also a werewolf, similar to Josh 40, remember how Josh is a werewolf? Josh 23 briefly mentioned something called the quickening. Don't worry about it. It's not going to come up until season, 4 or 5. Also, somebody's following them in Earth 23. It's Penny 23. I hate this character so much. If Penny 23 has 100 enemies, I am one. If Penny 23 has 1 enemy, I am one. If Penny 23 has 0 enemies, I'm dead. I'm not kidding. Turns out in the 23rd timeline, Penny and Julia were very madly in love. And I'm going to talk really quickly about how tragic it is that they just kind of dropped this storyline. It is the perfect setup for a love triangle because Julia and Katie have this crazy dynamic that is both friends, lovers, and enemies. Penny 40 is so madly in love with Katie and she's so madly in love with him, but he's dead and she's the only one that's actively trying to change that. And then we get Penny 23 and not to spoil too much ahead of time, but he starts to replace Penny 40 in the narrative and Katie starts going crazy because she's like, why is nobody else understanding that these are 2 different people? We cannot just switch them out like this. And Penny 23, kind of just doesn't even care about Katie at all. But he's so in love with Julia. But Julia has intimacy issues up the wazoo, and she just does not know Penny at all. And he's like, I'm gonna protect you. And she's like, I don't even know you. And then they just kind of don't deal with it. I don't know how to explain the difference between Penny 40 and Penny 23 other than, Penny 23 just kind of feels very, hey, ladies, what's up? I don't like him. And, Arjun Gupta, you're always going to be famous for me because it is very impressive that you are actually able to play the same character in 2 opposite ways and really actually make me able to distinguish between who's Penny 40 and who's Penny 23, because I see Penny 23 and then I see red and then I see Penny 40 and I'm like, baby boy, baby. I'm actually not exaggerating when I say that. There were a lot of bullshit characters on this show. You can hate Tick Pickwick. You could hate the Beast. My villain of the whole series is Penny 23. Jeepers creepers, the Beast shows up, Julia shoots the Rhinoman Ultra at him and it doesn't work, but we do get the reveal that the Beast in the 23rd timeline is not Martin Chatwin, it's Quentin. Remember when I was like, the producers just decided to let Jason Ralph play evil this season? Yeah, I'm talking about this. Something about the Tumblr girlies love Beast Quentin Coldwater so much. They are so obsessed with him. The amount of gifs I see of Jason Ralph as Beast Quentin, it can't be overstated. Ugh, blah, 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 they escape because Penny's a traveler. He's the only one that ever actually does anything. Anyway, they go to find Alice because Julia is like, hey, what the f***? When we talked to you last time, you were trying to bring Quentin back from the dead, so what's going on here? It doesn't matter. She brought him back from the dead. They killed Ember. Got it? But the good news is that she does have the Leo Blade, so they can kill him. Maybe. So they get there, and Quentin zeroes Alice immediately. She's down. She's out. Julia's master plan is that she takes out her own shade and then puts it in Quentin very briefly, because the way Alice brought him back, he came back without a shade. So that's why he's like evil mode, no emotion. She puts it in, he gets like all of the fifis, and he's like, Alice, no! And he just starts speed running the 5 stages of grief, like Jason Ralph BAFTA nomination imminent. So Julia is like, no, I'm not gonna kill you. I just want to help. We just need to work together. And then evil Jason Ralph Quentin 23 is like, you don't want to kill me? I want to kill me. And then he like Romeo and Juliet, because he's so bent out of shape about killing Alice. And it would be so impactful if I believed in the love of Quentin and Alice as characters. Unfortunately, it does feel a little unearned. Anyway, also Josh died. Josh 23 died. Josh 40's fine, I should clarify. Penny 23 comes back to the main timeline with the group. I don't know how it's possible, but it did happen. Also, Marina came back, but in like she just ran through the door and then sprinted off, and we're not gonna see her again until season 4. Season 3, episode 12. In a wild turn of events, I am suddenly Josh Hoberman. In my notes, the first thing I wrote is just, this episode is really good. So guys, this episode is really good. So because it's a TV show that is long and plot heavy, obviously they do recaps at the top of every episode that's like, previously on The Magicians. And they do something fun this episode where instead of like having it be an omniscient narrator and a bunch of flashbacks, it's Josh explaining all of the plot up until this point to Penny 23, which is kind of cute. Like, it's done in character, saying like, and of course Josh Hoberman saved the day yet again, and everybody wants to him so bad. And he touches on the Penny 40 and Katie lore. We find out that Penny 23 straight up never even met Katie in the 23rd timeline. I don't even think she went to Breakbills. Again, I say the setup for the love triangle is so good, and they just refuse to act on it, and it's criminal to me. And we all know that I'm a Penny and Katie truther until the day that I die, but let's talk about Josh saying, quote, Penny was the only person that she could even stand, and that cut both ways. Josh Hoberman, you and I are twin flames. We're gonna die together. Oh my god, and then Katie shows up at the physical kids cottage, and she's like, Penny? And then, ooh, Arjun Gupta, you ate this. He goes, oh, you're Katie. Yeah, I'm not your Penny. Katie has actually never known a day of peace, and it's giving me heart problems. So they're trying to figure out where this castle with the magic on switch and also a mystery monster is. And Alice is like, I know, I'm gonna go to the library. They'll give us clear answers probably. And after she leaves, Quentin is like, Penny, can you please follow her? Because obviously she's gonna do some shady shit. The library does not know where the castle is. And then they also give her this magical siphon that they're like, hey, you said your friend Julia's like basically a god now. Put this on her. It will take all of her magic away. And Alice just takes it. So obviously Penny, who remember is madly in love with Julia even though she wants nothing to do with him, snitches immediately to Quentin about this. Quentin confronts Alice about the siphon, and he's like, hey, what the f***? And Alice is like, oh, well, if we do this, then all of the magic will flow through the library, and they'll be able to decide who gets magic. To which Quentin goes, okay, what the f***? And Alice is like, oh, well, they can zoom out, and we can't, because we're all inherently selfish, but the library isn't, even though it is. And Quentin is like, shut the f*** up, and he takes the siphon from her. So Team Fillory goes to meet up with Frey. Do you remember Frey? She was introduced this season, and you completely forgot about her, as did I. Frey's now working as a bartender at a talking animal bar, and while Fen and Elliot are talking to her, Margot is off in the back talking to a talking bear named Humbledrum. Yeah, that bear is Frey's boyfriend, which is like, in Fillory, because the animals are anthropomorphic, it's not, like, illegal, but it is very taboo, because the animals don't really have, like, the same position in society that the humans do. Margot is pro-Humbledrum. She's like, love is love, pooks. And Elliot gets this iconic line to Frey. I will read it as written. Very well. I will say what I always wished my father said to me. I'm so happy that you're dating a bear. This show is good. This show is funny. Everybody move. It's a Penny and Katie scene. Katie is fighting for her life to use the walkie-talkie key, which is how we got the Bowie number. She's trying to use the walkie-talkie key to talk to Penny in the Underworld, because remember, it did talk to him when they all connected. Like, she's trying to get through down there because she hasn't heard from him, and it's just not working. And Penny 23 catches her trying to do this, and he's like, oh, you're trying to talk to the other Penny. Sorry, let me do it in my Penny 23 voice. Oh, you're trying to talk to the other Penny. And Katie is like, no offense, you are the other Penny. Quick with it. Evil reply. Love her for it. So she's the off because everybody's acting like they have a Penny, so they don't need their Penny. They're like, well, we have a traveler. Like, that's, we're fine. And Katie is like,
he's not the same guy.
And I'm with her. So Penny 23 is like, what you're doing for your Penny, like, the only person that I would ever do that for is Julia. And they kind of, like, bond over the fact that they both have these people that they love, but there's barriers. So they go out for drinks, which is a little bit sweet. I will give them that. They end up talking about the Reynard of it all because Katie's trying to, like, explain how Julia does not really want to date anybody right now because she's sort of working through some things. And Penny 23 is like, oh, well, what happened to Reynard after that? And Katie says, quote, I don't know. It's not really about me. None of it has ever actually felt like it was about me. So Team Fillory needs to trick Tick into holding an election because they're trying to invent democracy, but since they're not kings and queens, they can't call for an election. So they just start lying and saying that there's going to be one anyway. Let's also keep in mind that this was Margot's plan. That matters to me, that we all know that this was Margot's idea. So Margot, who came up with the idea, was like, hey, Elliot, what's our campaign slogan gonna be? You know, you and me, co-campaigners. And Elliot's like, we're actually not running a co-campaign. It's just gonna be me on the ballot, which Margot is rightfully about. Elliot is like, Fillory's patriarchal, and they want a male candidate, and they're just doing the Game of Thrones thing again, where they're like, at the last possible minute, we need to make sexism an issue for the inheritance plotline in the fantasy world. Get over it. Grow up. As part of his campaign, Elliot has Julia go and do, like, random acts of magic around Fillory, both to be like, look, we're kind. Also, children of Earth are the only ones that can do magic, so you need us. Team Earth is winning the election. They're doing great. Elliot is making false promises. Julia is doing miracles. And Tick Pickwick decides to leak Elliot's court transcripts. I don't know if we remember the Wombat trial, but Elliot kind of said some nasty things about Fillory. Like, that it's nasty, that it's a hole, that the children of Earth are the only good thing about it. So yeah, that would be a hit to the campaign. Katie and Penny 23 ask Julia if she wants to go hunt down Reynard with them. And Arjun Gupta / Penny 23, you did eat the line, you can always say no. Beautiful. Love that. So they go find him, and he's like living as a human, and he has these feminist literature books, like The Second Sex and some bullshit. And he's like, I've changed. I'm a different man now. And it was a ruse. It was a ruse. He pulls a gun on them. specifically the gun with the god-killing bullet from last season. Don't worry, Julia uses her god magic to freeze him. They take the magic god-killing gun from him because they're like, this would kill a monster. Anyway, we're gonna leave Reynard frozen until he dies. And I'm like, yes! Kill his ass! Huzzah! Election results are in. Elliot lost, but Tick also lost. In a surprise twist, Margot Hansen won the election for High King of Fillory as a write-in candidate because, for some reason, nobody ever went after the talking animal vote before. Elliot's like kind of for half a second, and then he immediately gets down on a knee and he's like, you deserve this, you're gonna be an amazing High King, I love you. This sequence is so beautiful. Summer Bishel is doing like a life-changing performance in it. It just feels so beautifully built towards, like, this entire show, I think, has been a progression of Margot getting to be High King, because consistently, over and over, she's the only person that actually cared about Fillory. The deal with the Fairy Queen goes through, they get the key, the fairies get territory, a seat at the government, and citizenship. And then also the Fairy Queen is like, Margot, I always saw something special in you, and maybe now you'll see something special as well. And she gives her eye back, but it's not her eye, it's a fairy eye. So she can see, like, magic and invisibility and, like, all of this crazy bull. So once Team Kill God gets back to the physical kids' cottage, Katie tries the Unity key again, and it works. And, like, she hears Penny's voice, and she's like, I don't know how much time we have, but I've got to get you out of the underworld no matter what it takes. I promise I love you. And then she hears, Katie, this is Penny 23. Which means that the key has officially replaced Penny 40 with Penny 23, which means that, one, there's no way to talk to Penny 40 at all ever again, and two, like, that's it. Like, the universe itself has decided that she needs to drop it. Season 3, episode 13, season finale, baby! Congratulations, Julia Wicker, you are officially a full-on goddess now. She meets up with Iris, goddess of the rainbow, and Iris is like, come on, Pooks, we're gonna go do god stuff now. And Julia's like, what about my friends? And Iris is like, you have more important things to worry about. Julia and Quentin do have a really sweet goodbye scene, though. Actors are acting, script is scripting, and Julia imbues Quentin with enough magic for one spell. One. He can do one spell. So they figure out where the castle is, and they're all prepping to go, and Margot leaves Fen as interim High King while she's off doing this quest, because it's basically on, like, the other side of the planet. The Fairy Queen is gassing her up, but also she says, Fen, Pooks, fairies are being hunted in Fillory, so can we maybe do something about that since they're your citizens now? Quentin uses the magic for that one-off spell to astral project into the dreams of the girl in the book. So she's real, and she lives in the castle, and she's the jailer for the monster that also lives in the castle. And in the dream, they make the deal that she's going to open a back door so that the team can get in. But, in exchange, Quentin has to be the new jailer. So he's sacrificing himself. He's going to stay at the castle, possibly for all of eternity. Nobody is happy about this, least of all Elliot. So Fen is on fairy protection duty, and she realizes the people that are hunting the fairies are Irene McAllister and the evil asshole Australian librarian. It turns out that because the siphon didn't get Julia's god magic, they're trying to juice up one of their own to also use for the library, and they're doing that by killing and grinding up fairies, which is obviously, like, bad, but also, like, a very time-consuming effort on their end. So Fen is like, okay, well, I can, like, stall them, and maybe, like, you guys can turn on magic before, like, they get fed up, and, like, da-da-da, like, we can time this, maybe, and the Fairy Queen is like, no, I'm gonna make money moves, I think. She takes this opportunity to strike a deal with Irene, where in exchange for her body, because she has the power of 50 fairies, because she's the fairy queen, the McAllisters, on behalf of all humans, agree that no non-fairies will ever kill fairies. Alice goes to strike a deal with the dean. She says that if magic gets turned back on, then she's gonna go, like, crazy girl sicko mode, so she wants to use this potion that she's heard can erase all of your memories and give you a completely different life. Good news, the team gets to the castle. Quentin meets up with the knight/jailer, and she introduces him to the monster. Here, display. Computer, display. The monster is sort of like childish, kind of, and he needs, like, constant attention. He's one of those villains that's very like, la 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 la, I would kill you now. So Elliot and Alice are both tailing Quentin when this happens. Quentin meets the monster. He does a little card trick for it, which entertains the monster because he's very la 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 la. And then, boom, Elliot shoots the monster with the god-killing gun. Except, gag, we have yet another body-hopping monster, and it possesses the knight/jailer, who skitters away. Okay, so all of them get together where they're gonna turn on the magic with the magical keys, and shocking to nobody, Alice betrays them again. Who saw it coming? Who could have known? Who would have thought that Alice Quinn, of all people, was gonna betray the team? She does a bunch of fairy coke and then starts to do magic to straight up melt all of the keys down. Because she's like, nobody needs magic! We don't need magic! It makes us all worse! Girl, that is your journey, and you can get over it. Goddess Julia opens her third eye and senses that her friends are in a situation and blips into the castle. She magically restrains Alice instant style, thank you MVP Julia Wicker. And then she does, the most selfless thing I have ever seen depicted in cinema history. Julia uses every single drop of her god magic to just remake the keys. So she gives up godhood in order to fix this bullshit situation that Alice put them all in. This, by the way, is Julia's metatextual penance for the season 1 betrayal. So with the newly made keys, Alice out of commission, and Julia hopping into Alice's place, congratulations, gang. They turn on magic again. Yay! Yay! Huzzah! Yippee! Yippee! Except, jump scare. The f***ing asshole librarian traveler, Irene McAllister, and Dean Fogg show up. They pull out the siphon that the fairy queen sacrificed her full life to make in order for safety for the fairies, and they put it on the thing that is distributing the magic, and it reroutes it to the library, which makes magic no longer a public resource. And then, just to be a f***ing bitch, the dean pulls out 7 vials of that memory wipe potion, and we cut to black. Okay, so we get a time jump. Ready for it? Let's catch up. 1, Breakbills has magic again. Awesome. But it's a very, very, very limited supply, to the point that the teachers can't even assign homework for the students because they don't have enough magic to spare. Let's see how everybody is doing post time jump and also memory wipification. Alice is in a special little circle of I personally feel no sympathy for. She didn't get her memory wiped. They just locked her up in the library in a prison cell. So she knows that all of her friends are out there and they just have, like, no idea. So she's going crazy because the dean comes and he's like, Alice, you actually need to calm down. I thought this is what you wanted. And she's like, no, you don't understand. There's a monster on the loose and it's going to find them and they don't even know to be looking for it. They're dead. Margot is rocking a chic new bangs look, and her new name is Janet, which is a reference to the books. Josh is an Uber driver who's picking Margot / Janet up from the airport, and there's this moment when she gets into the car and they make eye contact, and you in the audience are like, oh my god, the spell's gonna be broken, I love TV and cinema, I hope Josh and Margot recognize each other. No. She's like, can you drive the car, please? And Josh is like, give me 5 stars, I'm an Uber driver. Julia's an architect, good for her, proud of her, I suppose. Penny is a DJ. Sure, why not? Katie is a drug dealer, and let's all just go ahead and rest easy. This is a spoiler for season 4, but I would be so upset if I heard that Katie's alter ego is a drug dealer and I had to wait to find out what happens with that. She's not actually a drug dealer. I think that between seasons, the writers maybe realized that that was a terrible idea, so they change it to something that is only marginally better. She's an undercover cop. Discuss in the comments if you think that fixes it. Okay, the last person that we catch up with is Quentin. He's giving beanie plus blazer, grad student, dark academia vibes. He's like running and he has 6 million books in his hands, looking ripe to walk into somebody who has a piping hot cup of coffee and all of their papers go scattering. So he's walking down the street and who runs into him but Elliot? And it's not Elliot plus alter ego, it's Elliot. And we know this because he goes, Quentin! And something hinky is going on because we just saw Josh and Margot meet, and we know that seeing each other doesn't break the spell. So what happened here in this time jump? You, the viewer, get so excited because you're like, oh my god, I'm about to relive A Life in a Day once again, thank god. No. No. Elliot is like, do a card trick for me, Quentin. And you, the viewer, are like, yes, I love it when Quentin does card tricks. And then Elliot says, will you play with me? Which is what the monster said in the castle, and then his eyes shine and do the little monster thing. Elliot is possessed by the monster. The monster / Elliot kidnaps Quentin, and that's it. That's the end of the season. Ugh! That last few episodes, 8! Guys, that is the end of my Magician Season 3 video. I'm pretty happy with it. This is by far my favorite season of the show. Sorry that it took maybe a little bit longer than I promised it was going to, but I hope that you liked the final result. Let's recap really quickly how all of our characters are doing. Penny 23, flop. Alice, flop. Julia, good for her, but flop. Elliot, R.I.P. Quentin, man bun. Katie, captain of the struggle bus. Josh, that's Pookie. Oh, Margot, got a kingdom, lost it immediately. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, tell me I look like Linda Evangelista in the comments, you know, do what you will. And yeah, the next video that I'm planning is going to be Game of Thrones for hot people, which I've already started scripting, but that's, let's be honest, going to take most of the summer to conquer. Oh yeah, also next week I graduate. How goofy is that? Yeah. Bye.